Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. So make sure you're in the right session. This is what's new in voice, video, and conferencing. I think the and conferencing was missed off the session, guys, right? But it's a bit of all-encompassing around collaboration with voice, with video, and all what's new around Communications Server 14, what's changed around there. Okay, so with the agenda, I'm going to take a bit of a slightly deeper dive than we did this morning in the intro session, where we actually look at the architecture and feature enhancements around voice back at the server level, and also looking at this now from as a PBX type replacement capability. Okay, when we talk about voice communications here, we talk about enterprise PBX or IPPBX type replacement capability. Then we're going to talk a little bit and show and walk through the new range of phones or IP phones, or IP endpoints, some of which we got up here, which are the Polycom devices, which have been optimized and designed to work exclusively with Communications Server 14. So we'll talk about some of those. Then getting into the video conferencing collab piece, what's changed, right? So there's been huge changes from where we were with R2 to what we're now delivering here with CS14, Communications Server 14. Best way to bring all that together is with demo, okay? You can show all this stuff on charts, but UC is one of the best things to demo to actually get the understanding of how it works, what's the user experience like, what's the features, what's the capability. So we'll spend a chunk of time around looking at the demo. Then, probably most importantly to some people, there's prizes. Okay, so we've got a Q&A at the end. We've got some 3 HD webcams and a couple of T-shirts for the unlucky ones who don't get the webcams around there. And we do that at the Q&A at the end as we step through on there. Okay, so first up, just set the scene around voice communications, all right? Because people often go out and speak to customers and partners, and Microsoft in voice comms. Ooh, yeah. I'm not too sure about that. I didn't know where why we're in this business and what we're moving towards, and what we're actually delivering. If we step back in time, and I've used this chart quite a lot, so apologies if I present it to you for a presentation, but I always like to put this up. When we look through communications and telephony over the ages, right, and this isn't a sign of just to test how old everyone is, but back in the 80s, it was all about analog, right? It was all about rotary dials, great. I pick up a phone, I get a nice chunky dial tone, and I ring. Whoever else has got one of these nice rotary phones at the other end. Okay. That was the experience, whether it was in the consumer space, in the residential space, whether that was in the enterprise, in the business. This would be a phone. I could call other users in the business. I had one of these things. Or I could phone out and receive calls traditionally via the operator or the receptionist as it comes in. Then we moved into the 90s and the era of digital, right? TDM, digital telephony, changed the world, okay? What did it really deliver? So it delivered us a lot more buttons on the phone, right? But we had dial tone again, All I fundamentally had as a user was that same dial tone, that same experience, right? I pick the device up, it's dial tone, I call another device. Right? Cool, I've got a nice little grayscale display on there as well, now it tells me the time. That's what I'm calling. Then the big revolution, everything's going to change, the world's going to change, it's IP, right? IP changes everything, absolutely everything when it comes to comms. Yeah, it does some stuff at the back end around consolidation of infrastructure. But what about the user experience, right? Now, I had another bit of plastic on the phone with a bigger screen and slightly more information. I've still got dial tone. Right? Again, it's just that same, right? Whether it was in the 80s or now, I'm just getting dial tone and I can call another device, right? Not calling a person. And as we step through, even today, right, with the evolution of IP and how it's happened, fundamentally, and I see a lot of RFPs and things coming out to the market, customers still look at this from a communications, from a voice perspective, right? That traditional voice perspective, which is all about dial tone. The only difference, apart from the underlying network technology moving from analog through digital through IP, is now I'm paying $700 for my dial tone on a user's desk, right? So it's a lot more expensive, shiny bit of plastic, but fundamentally it's exactly the same as it was 30 years ago. So we'll say why Microsoft in voice and why we see it as a better way. Delivering this through software and changing it so it's not about devices, so it's about people, right? Presence is the 21st century dial tone, right? That's my picture around this stuff. If you know that somebody is available, I don't care about the device. I don't care where they happen to be geographically. I need to communicate with them based on availability, not based on a network that's available. Based on, my phone's working because I've got a dial tone. Cool. And the other device is ringing because I'm getting a ringing tone. But I need to know that the person or people I need to communicate with and collaborate with are actually there beforehand. And that's where we really say, it's really this groundswell of change, if you like, moving from dial tone-centric solutions to what we see as presence-based and people-based communications. So with that, when you look through where we've come from and where we've moved to, or moving to with CS14, so back in 2007, February 2007, we've done the launch for Office Communication Server, 2007-01. And we talked about instant messaging, we talked about presence. We introduced the concept with Exchange Server 2007 back then that we could deliver unified messaging, right? So replacement for those traditional voicemail type platforms, and how they've traditionally been associated with PBXs. And we introduced some voice capability in Adara 1, okay? Then we had conferencing, web conferencing, all right? Through audio, through video, and delivering that into the desktop, okay? And the whole desktop integration layer. And this really changed, a lot of the analysts were looking then and saying, wow, this is actually really going to change the industry as we move forward. But even back then, we set a vision, okay, that within 5 years we wanted to have a full, unified, capable collaboration platform that we deliver to the market for all communications needs, including voice. Okay? So that was where we started. And if you look at the bottom of the chart here, there's three figures, 71%, 17% and 12%. What we've actually done each year is we benchmarked with all the analysts, with Gartner, with things like VoiceCon and the RFPs they get issued that all the vendors respond to. And we've looked at the traditional voice-based telephony RFPs and said, okay, how do we address that feature set in requirement? Based on our products. So OCS 2007 was, okay, we'll hit 71% of your feature requirements. For a lot of enterprise customers, that wasn't enough to say, okay, let me throw away my PBX, let me deploy Office Communications Server. Okay? And so we saw a lot of deployments because of our sort of open integration capabilities where we tied OCS to the desktop and leveraged a PBX still for our voice component. But we integrated to do things like click to call, all right? And the ability to sort of tie the two systems together. All right? OCS is SIP and it's SIP based, okay? So we can tie that together either directly with PBXs or through gateways from our gateway partners as well. So OCS 2007 R2 came along, just about 18 months after that, probably less. October, I think it was, 2009. I think when that hit into market. Then we really changed and introduced a lot more voice features, voice capability into the platform. So single number reach, the ability to find me on one number, whatever device I'm on. You find my DDI number, they can call me, you can find me on my mobile, where I happen to be finding. We do SIM ring, we do a whole stuff around call routing. We introduced the concept of an attendant console. For someone in the department that may be answering calls for everybody in the sales department, sort of a higher volume call-based scenarios. Right? So it's not just about our desktop communicator client, it's about delivering a specific client tailored for particular roles in the organization. Delegation, team call, response groups, all of these are telephony features, often delivered in a PBX in a different way, all right? Because we think things like a response group and how we can route a call to the sales team, okay? Not only do we see that all these members are in the sales team, therefore when a call comes in for sales, it rings all their phones, we also start to leverage presence into that mix. Say, okay, based on availability plus the other criteria, then we route the calls accordingly. So start to do things a bit more intelligently than always been done with the legacy voice platforms. SIP or SIP trunking was something we introduced with R2. So it doesn't show up too well on screen on the black and blue there, but essentially this is taking our traditional lines from the telco or your PSTN provider, and rather than delivering them over the traditional systems, it's delivering them over IP. Okay? So SIP trunking was something we brought in there. Higher def video. We introduced 720p type capable video for peer-to-peer on there. Right? Still SIF-based video in terms of multi-party collaboration and conferencing when we got to more than 2 people in there. And again, some of the APIs that were exposed so developers could then build upon that platform started to change things around. So in areas such as the question you got this morning around contact center, what do we do about contact center? Right? We don't natively have a skills-based running contact center engine, but we have partners that do, and they've used our APIs, so it just integrates seamlessly out of the box to address those needs. So that was R2, and we reckon we hit another sort of 17%, so we're up to about 88% of feature capability. So CS14, I talked about this morning, is the big one, right? It's the big launch. Now we're saying, whatever you want to do, Mr. Customer, in terms of your full telephony solution, whatever your capability may or your requirement may be, we can deliver that from Communication Server 14. Okay? So you can see on the chart things that have changed. Branch resiliency, in terms of having survivable branch appliances and how they can stand up so you can have survivable sites in the event of a data center outage or a WAN outage. Okay? Again, simplifying how you build out high availability in the data center. And Andrew's got one of the other UC sessions where he's actually looked at high availability and how that all ties together. Caller mission control was a biggie, all right? Whenever I was speaking to the network guys, the question that came up time and time again was, if you understand what we do with voice and video codecs, they're pretty elastic, right? They'll contract and expand based on what we've got. But there were no set limits on what we'd actually deliver across a link. We'd just keep throwing stuff down that link, right? And then calls would contract in bandwidth, okay? until so you couldn't really manage that effectively all of the time, right? Especially here in New Zealand, where bandwidth can be, at a premium in terms of cost when you compare it with other geographies around the world. So we introduced caller mission control, which enabled us to put in set controls and policies around, for example, voice, and how voice can be routed, and how that can be handled and rerouted alternatively once we reach our masses. Again, come to the planning and deployment session, and we'll be covering off that in detail, actually going through potential configuration. Then features, okay, telephony features. So we had a core group of voice-based, PBX-based voice features, hold, transfer, rollover, all of these different things we had natively through Release 2 with Office Communications Server. Okay. But again, we recognise the need to enhance that as we move through Communications Server 14. So I'm going to talk through some of these features as we drop through into those as well. So things like call park, private line, having multiple line appearances, for execs who need a second line deployed to their client as it goes on there. Music on hold is now out of the box as default on the client side, delivered out there. Enhanced 911, so this is really US-centric right now, and I touched on this morning in that E911 is about how we actually locate an individual that's connected over an IP network, and if I dial an emergency number, so it actually sends that geographic information through. Okay, so that's something that could potentially come if it hits legislation down here in New Zealand at some stage moving forward. Simplify the routing changes, in terms of how you configure this and how the engine actually routes voice traffic. Okay, and I'll talk a little tiny bit around media bypass and a mediation server and some of the changes that have happened between where we were with R2 and what we're delivering here. Devices. Devices comes up all the time, right? So I mentioned I've got these Polycom devices here from the Frisbee conference phone. This runs a communicator client on the screen on here when it's fired up. Exactly the same as my desktop client it looks on here in terms of, I expose the contact card with a photo and presence and all that stuff. Likewise, we have this low-end IP phone designed as a common area phone. Stick it in a lobby, stick it in the cafeteria area within a business. Okay, that's that type of device. Then we move up to an information worker type phone. This has gigabit Ethernet pass-through switches on the back. Okay, it allows me to tether this to my PC for a better together experience for click to call and integrating. Again, the software load is common across the devices as we actually push through that as well. Okay, so you get the same experience as a user. Simple things like meetings now, right? I get an invite to an audio conference. I'm just there, it's a phone, I'll perhaps get a reminder on my mobile. If I'm signed into this device, because I can also sign onto this device independently, okay, by numeric sign-on. I don't have to have a PC there at all, it's a standalone IP device. I sign on there, my calendar's exposed into this device as well. So if I do have an invite to a meeting or a conference, okay, my meeting reminder pops up on the phone just as it would do on your desktop with Outlook, okay, and I have a one-click join button, soft key, in terms of dynamic soft keys on here, just click, and it joins me automatically to the conference. I'm already authenticated, I'm straight in there. No writing down PIN numbers, access codes, and all that type of stuff as it goes in. So whilst I call them IP phones, fundamentally they're much more than that because they also incorporate things like presence, contact cards, search, and all those other capabilities dropped into the device as well. So all of that and some more, there's plenty more that's not listed on the chart on there. We reckon we've hit another 12%, which if we do the maths comes up to about 99 or so, right? So fundamentally we say we can hit any core scenario, any core back-end availability, high availability scenario, branch scenario, whatever you want now, we can deliver that from Communications Server 14 out of the box, okay? So we're saying, yep, we are in this voice game, very, very serious about being in this voice game, and this is really just the start in terms of, we're here, and as we evolve this even further as we move forward. So topologies. Let's have a look at R2 and where we were, then touch on Communications Server 14 and what's new, what's changed, fundamentally around that. All right, so just showing a topology there, simple one in terms of we have a front-end server, we have our back-end server. Mediation servers do a number of things. They sort of decrypt and encrypt traffic on the internal network to the external network. Fundamentally, you would connect these things if you were connecting into another PBX, a SIP-based PBX, or to the PSTN, either via SIP trunks, as is shown on here, or via an IP PBX, okay, which could be through a gateway or directly just an IP connection between the two. So fundamentally, that's like the connection point, if you like, or the DMARC point as it goes out, as it was with the Release 2. In the DMZ, we have our edge server, so delivering our remote access capability for our users, the VPN-less access. So wherever I have web access, I can fire up and I can have voice, I can have video and all that lovely stuff that's out there. It's where I then extend presence from other organizations into my organization, so I can see the presence of guys having to have an OCS deployment deployed if we're mutually federated around there. And again, that's rich federation. Okay, that's IM, that's voice, that's video, presence, etc. that goes through there. Likewise with PIC or public internet connectivity. We federate or have, you can add users from MSN into your communicator server, communicator client account as it goes in there, from Yahoo, from AOL. With the MSN, Windows Live, the new bidder, we can also do HD video and HD audio federation into those as well, extending that capability and rich media out beyond the boundaries of just within the organisation as it goes through. At the back end with R2, so we had Exchange Server 2007 or 2010, delivering our role, our Unified Messaging role. And obviously some prereqs around AD, recommended around archiving and monitoring and those types of things to actually push in as well. So that's where we were with R2. With CS14, I've highlighted the changes in the white there in the boxes as we go through. Okay, the big one that's from an architecture point of view is mediation server. So with release 2, wherever I had a site and I wanted to connect in telephone lines to that site, like local numbers, I might have some in Nelson, some in Wellington, some in Christchurch, and I want all these guys, rather than just having one data center in Auckland with just Auckland numbers connected to it, with them hanging off. I want to deliver that local experience, inbound and outbound, and potentially I want to deliver survivability as it goes out there as well. Then we start to have options, okay, as we go with CS14. So we're showing, we're not showing on this diagram, it's SBA, right down the bottom. Survivable branch appliance in this file. Okay. SBA. SBA is an appliance from one of our hardware partners. There's 5, I believe, at launch. HP, Audio Codes, Dialogic, Ferrari, as in not the Ferrari car, but the gateway guys. And what have I missed off? Dialogic, HP. One more. There are 5. If you go to our Interop site, we can actually show you the list in terms of what they are. Okay, so they've built these survivable branch appliances, okay, that you can drop into a site. They have an embedded gateway within there, so you can different modules. You can terminate different types of lines, whether they're E1 type lines, whether they're basic rate type ISDN lines, and connect them into. Okay, you can push those into a site, and that has a survivable SIP registrar in it as well. So whenever that branch appliance loses connectivity with a data center, users within the site aren't going to lose their services, all right? They're not going to lose their voice calls. Again, Andrew's going to show around the media resiliency and how that works when you lose and get network connectivity that comes back in as well. But with branch appliance, essentially, what you're saying now is, yes, I can have a highly available, highly redundant solution that addresses all of those smaller sites as well. Again, I think I touched on it this morning. When we talk branch, the SBA is designed up to 1,000 users. So you need a pretty big branch to eat this thing up before you start to look at a different architecture to actually take it in. So from us here in New Zealand, all right, I mean, that's pretty much going to address our needs for pretty much every branch as it pops through. But the mediation server, I was talking about a moment ago, the front end now embeds that mediation server. Well, you can have it. You can run it separate, or you can run it within this as a service itself. What does that really mean? It means where I've got those remote sites with our local PSTN connections, as it goes in there, okay, I now don't have to have, like I did in R2, one mediation server for every single gateway. It was a one-to-one mapping, all right? So if I've got 50 sites in my network and I want them all to have local connectivity out of those branches, that would mean 50 mediation servers. And it was, thank you very much for your time, Mr. Microsoft, but that's far too expensive and we're going to look at another type of solution. Right? So again, that's changed with 14 in the fact that we can actually run that as a service on the front end. And that one mediation service is now not a single peer-to-peer type connectivity. That can actually map to multiple gateways in terms of how we route and handle that traffic as it goes through. Exchange UM, you see here it says on-prem or online. Okay, obviously there's a big push, and we talk more and more about the cloud. Okay, so as we evolve our cloud strategy, not just yet here in terms of Asia Pacific, but potentially options going forward in how you can move, rather than having, if you've got hosted Exchange within the cloud, you can also take your Exchange UM and deploy that in the cloud as well. Right? Typically, barriers have been around voice and having remote servers over them. Perhaps in Singapore, where our data center is around latency. Right? If I want to have a voice call, and how does that affect on the network, on the internet, and all that kind of stuff. With UM and voicemail, it's not so bad because this is one way. All right? It's somebody phoning me up, listening to my message getting played back to them across that network connection, and then leaving a message gets played back out. Right? So it's not a two-way interactive communication as much as a traditional voice call may be. So this is how we can start to deliver things like UM up in the cloud, and you can have hybrid type environments with communication server on premise, and how that takes away as well. So that mediation server and how that service now can co-locate. So the charts really show how that changes. Okay. If I've got a global topology and I've got a US network, I've got my European site and I've got my Asia Pacific site around it. One in LA, so one in Germany, one in Sydney, as it goes through there. You can see with R2, I had to have a mediation server for each physical gateway and each physical route as it went out there. Okay, I couldn't consolidate any of the infrastructure. So as I said before, that's really where this now starts to change with 14. In fact, you can deliver this at a much, much lower cost point because one mediation server or service running on the front end can route to multiple gateways, okay? And we can also have multiple routes within those two, and have multiple gateways in different locations in the same geographic cluster as it moves through there. Another big change is around what we call media bypass, okay, in the mediation server. So again, with R2, on a lot of occasions, a lot of different call scenarios, if I was remote and I was in Wellington and my mediation server was up in Auckland, when I made a voice call, that was traversing all the way across the WAN up to Auckland, then through the mediation server, then out of the gateway that happened to map to, right? If I didn't deploy mediation servers everywhere. What that meant is a lot of hairpinning or tromboning of voice traffic, okay? We could potentially going up a link, down a link, and out again, okay? To actually push that through. So if your gateway wasn't co-located with your mediation server, but so the mediation server's in Auckland, my call comes up to Auckland, hits the mediation server, drops down out of the appropriate gateway where that happens to be, all right, that could be coming back down the same link again. So we actually now look and do media bypass. So on a number of different call scenarios, not just here when it's talking about calls egressing out to the PSTN. So when I'm in that branch, I can go straight out to that gateway that's on site without the need to actually traverse the network to find the mediation server, right? So wherever possible, we keep media local now. So it's fundamentally a big, big change, especially when you look at the likes of network planning and how that comes into effect. Analog devices, because everyone's still got some, somewhere or the other, whatever happens to be. Fax machine tends to be the most common one, or analog phones in certain areas. You often see this a lot in the healthcare industry, right? In wards and stuff like that, or on hospital corridors. They don't want to deploy, an IP phone on there, then they tend to lose them quite often, right? So we want to put a low-cost analog devices out there. Okay? So we have ATAs through gateway partners that allow us to provide that analog connectivity. All right. The great thing about these is you'll see here this actually sits between the gateway and the device. Primary reason for that is with fax and fax pass-through. Okay. What we do is if we recognise an incoming fax call, we won't terminate that in communication server. We can pass that straight through the gateway, so we can maintain full fax functionality as it goes through there. Okay. But we do take things like CDR, all of that information is pushed through, and how we actually centrally manage these gateways. We don't need to manage them as another PBX, right? I don't need to go and deploy my CS14 infrastructure, then go in and have to do exactly the same thing around my gateway. Okay, so nearly all customers have some sort of PBX deployed today. So how do you then go and evolve and move from that legacy telephony environment and move to unified communications? Okay, right? You don't want to throw everything away and step into there potentially in day one. Yeah, great if you did. I'm happy to talk to you when you want to do that, right? But there's a reality behind it. A lot of customers, as we talked at the start, have invested heavily potentially in phones or phones for the desktop. They may still be sweating down that asset, and it needs to be retained. Or it may be a case of how do I ease migration? Okay, how do I roll out some users on unified comms and manage that, and then roll it across the organisation? Perhaps as sites allow in terms of network bandwidth and those sorts of things need to be considered as well. All right, so there's really three key scenarios when we look at how you can enhance or replace or add to an existing PBX infrastructure with Communication Server 14. Right? We say this is a complete solution, right, including telephony. All right. So number one, yep, you can replace that, and we've got some very, very large sort of global customers, Sprint, Royal Dutch Shell, and the like, who are actually doing that or have done that already. Okay. So here is where we have CS14 as our full and our only communications platform at all our locations as we go through. Here we have a connection to the PSTN, and that could be a SIP trunk straight to the provider, or during the transition phase, because all your lines are connected into the PBX still, right? We'll just hook into that, okay, and then migrate users on an ad hoc basis, okay, so you can actually move users around. We can have intercalling between the two platforms. They look as peer systems, okay, connected by a SIP from OCS or via a gateway to actually convert to traditional protocols as it goes through into the PBX platform, so we can actually manage that transition easily. Some of our gateway providers have also done some smarts on what we call upstream gateways. Okay, so this is where what they do is they actually put a gateway in front of the PBX. So imagine the line coming in and terminating onto your PBX, okay, or your E1, your primary lines come in and connect on there. Essentially, imagine breaking that in front of the PBX and putting in a gateway, then hooking the PBX back up to it, to the gateway. The gateway simultaneously has a connection that goes into communication server, all right? But the gateway is AD aware. So very, very easy here in that I have user that, I've got a traditional PBX phone on my desktop. Admin guy goes in, enables me for enterprise voice in Office Communication Server, or Communication Server 14. Okay. The second that's done, whenever a call comes in now from my DDI, the gateway can do an AD lookup. Oh, Paul Dolly, he's enabled for UC. I'm going to route that call to OCS. Okay. Simplifies the whole migration and moving away from that PBX infrastructure, because I don't need to, when I'm enabled for Communication Server as an endpoint, having the PBX guys having to come in and reconfigure the PBX to reroute my DDI number and send it through this gateway and then send it away. There's a much smarter way of doing it. So that's the concept of an upstream gateway and how you can actually handle and do that around there. Enhancing the PBX. Okay, so this is really now taking a legacy type PBX platform and enhancing it with full UC. Okay, so we leave the PBX phone in place for the transition, and we can enable things like SIM ring. Okay, so we can take the DDI number for the user. So this is me. It gets rehomed from my old legacy desk phone to Communication Server. Within Communication Server, there's simple tools like SIM ring, where I get a new number allocated to my old phone, and then that can actually pair that in there. So it's like an easy transition for a lot of users, all right? Because if you move a user, say, to, just give them a headset, because that's what they need in terms of their voice profile that goes around there. Taking them away from that traditional telephone-based platform, that adoption can be quite hard for a lot of users, all right? So easing that migration as you go through by having the PBX in place, putting in CS14 alongside, and then transitioning over time where you have both systems running effectively in parallel with the same number delivered to both. So that's how we do that with SIM ring. Okay. Click to call is another capability. It's limited in feature capability, to be honest, right? So RCC, or remote call control, when I talked about the previous versions of Office Communication Server, that was how it was traditionally deployed to enable voice. The communicator client was put to the desktop, the voice platform done the voice, and we've done some integration using RCC. All right? So this is something our protocol called CSTA, and it's how we connect to those PBXs to do that remote call control. Contrary to some myths that are actually out there, we are supporting and continue to support remote call control for both existing customers upgrading and for new customers looking to move to Communication Server 14 as well. Okay. So CSTA is in there. We do see it though as something that's going to not really be required over time. It really limits in how we can deliver a UC experience to a user. Okay. With remote call control, it actually detracts away, and it really ties me to that particular PBX phone because it locks me effectively to it. It doesn't extend into our mobility space and how I want to do UC and voice when I talk about what about if I'm not in the office and how I handle that experience. So it doesn't lend itself there very well. Where we already see the future is around SIP. And so with CS14, we've introduced something called SIP verbs. Okay. Now this SIP verbs is something where we can talk to another platform, a peer PBX, or whatever platform happens to be there, and we use things like get presence, set presence. Okay. So we can go and get presence from a PBX user. So if I monitor them, if they're not a UC or a Communication Server user, we can get the presence of that user on the phone, off the phone, and pull that through in there. Conversely, we can also set presence. So we can say, Paul's presence is set to in a conference, send that out to the PBX, so that can then do something with that presence. So we really see that as being, the ability using SIP verbs, we can actually then extend that and really actually a rich layer of integration points between the two. So remote call control is certainly not something we'll be actively talking out there saying this is the best way to deploy, because realistically it's not. But it can get you over that hump if there is a requirement to sweat down that PBX asset as it goes through. But fundamentally, if you've got a fairly new PBX, or even not, we can do this direct SIP connectivity as mentioned in the first one, and we can still ease that migration over time. All right? So that's fundamentally is the best way to actually look at that. Whether it's a full replace or a partial replace, even or an extended time period replace, that would be the best way of actually doing it. The third one is, well, what about if I just bought a new phone system 6 months ago. I really just can't justify the CFO that I need to take that away and actually move now. So now we say, okay, we can enhance and add things like conferencing, presence, instant messaging to the PBX as it goes on here. Okay, there's a join from feature, which I'll show you in the client, which means that if I'm just a PBX phone user and I've got a traditional phone, that in my Outlook, when I get a pop-up and I can join a conference call, as you'll see as we step through the demo, I can automatically make that call my PBX extension number. or any phone number I want. Okay, so I actually join that conference call from my legacy phone. So we're sort of bringing that UC experience and enhancing it into that PBX. We can actually push it through. So that's the join from feature. Okay, so that enables you to step that over time, right? You can try UC to the desktop. You can get the capability in terms of the rich video, the rich audio conferencing capability, while still using a legacy voice platform to actually support that until such time as you think, okay, yep, this is right for us. Let's move here and evolve into communication server for our complete platform. So that's the various scenarios. So let's go to some of the features. So I mentioned, these are user features primarily, but private line for the exec that has everything, right? So this is where I have the second line in. I always make the joke about one for the wife, one for the girlfriend, but it's not always appropriate, so I won't say that. But essentially, private line is where you have a second inbound line or inbound call that comes in, okay, that is separate. It can still handle and have the same thing that has the same SIP URI or address, the same unified messaging mailbox for me as a user. Effectively now I've got two DDI numbers now associated with me. Present source updates regardless of which line I happen to be using as it goes on there. Okay, but it just means that for those execs that require it, they can have a private line that's outside of what they do with that. All other things like call pickup, call park, those sorts of stuff, all works around there. Fundamentally, one thing though, it's available for inbound calls only, and it overrides anything you may have set in terms of, if you set your client to do not disturb or call forwarding and those types of rules, they apply only to the main line, not with the private line. So that's designed as whoever I give it to in terms of other execs that need to contact me, they can get straight through effectively on my hotline or private line. Malicious call trace, another feature that was introduced with 14, where you can flag a previous call if someone phones me up and starts abusing me down the phone. Okay, you can often have it in a lot of different, if you're in a sort of business consumer type model where you maybe get abusive customers phoning into you, you can actually flag that previous call up there. So it puts a flag and can send an alert into the admin. Okay, so they can identify that as a malicious call, pops in, pulls through all the calling line ID, so that can be identified and dealt with as well as it goes in. So that's supported not only on the desktop client, if you're using that for your voice, whether you're using one of these type of phones as a standalone device, we can support that feature as it goes through there, and also on the receptionist or the attendant console as it goes through. Okay, so effectively we just tag that in the CDR database, and we can pop that out to the administrator as it goes through. Call Park, another new voice feature for CS14. Okay, it actually pops in there. We have this concept of the parking lot or orbit, where we can actually hold in callers and queue out calls where they can actually be put in and retrieved. We can have ring back, so a call that's not retrieved, if I parked a call for somebody, can come back to me after a specific timeout, all configurable. Or we can go to fallback destinations. If I park a call, if it doesn't get picked up, we can auto send that call back into the attendant, okay, after a certain period of time as well. So flexible application around how we handle and how we can route calls once they've already been terminated into communication server and handled by somebody as it goes in. E911 I'll touch through quickly because really this is a US-centric type application, but with communication server we have this location database, okay, which essentially at a simple level just maps in the network switch that I'm connected into, the LAN switch, or maybe the access point that I'm connected to, and over SIP it can actually send that information through to the emergency service provider. Okay, so imagine the concept, how this would really work once we get to New Zealand in terms of that requirement is I dial emergency services and I'm in Auckland. Okay, that actually populates that. Paul's in Microsoft Auckland, and it knows that by the MAC address of the access point I'm connected to, it maps that in by the location database and says that MAC address is in Microsoft, 6th floor, Auckland, down the viaduct. Okay, that information with my call is sent over SIP into the emergency services provider. Okay, so they've got my geographic whereabouts. If it's in a Wi-Fi access point, it'll say nearby to 6th floor room, whatever it happens to be that the access point is in. Okay, so you can actually locate that now. Because the concept now of IP and anywhere access without the likes of VPN means I could be geographically located anywhere. Right? So it's how we now handle and use location determination for emergency services in the US. IP phones, so we have those here, I've talked about already. For peripherals in terms of what we call optimized for communication server, all right, there are lots, and let's try to put a few together and show them on the chart up there. Those are essentially are USB devices, all right? So when I am using my PC as my phone, all right, what sort of device I may use on there may depend on my profile, I travel a fair bit, so I tend to either use a Bluetooth headset, perhaps a wired headset as it goes on, or a little mini speakerphone, all right? It's horses for courses, around these types of devices. There's the likes of attendant type ones with DECT and long range, so they can go from a base station, so they can actually walk around and take and receive calls. We've got things like the what's previously known as the roundtable type of device as it goes out there, for offering that video or multimedia conference experience as it pushes through there. If you want to look up about what different devices are available from all our different partners, so again, big differentiator here from the PBX guys, right? We do not manufacture or supply the actual end user devices like with the gateways, okay, and the servers, right? We're just providing the software for them, okay? What this really does is drives down the price point of all of these types of devices from those sorts of partners. But if you have a look at the website, www.optimized optimized US, so don't forget the Z, not the S, all right, in terms of optimized. Once you go through there, you can look through all the different devices that we have for communication center. But one area that we have addressed is with specific phones and devices. So if we recap where we were with OCS R2, our range of devices, standalone IP phones, consisted of one. Right? Nice high-end touch colour screen device that would set you back anything, depending on the exchange rate, $700, $800, all that sort of price points in terms of a retail price point. Okay, so it wasn't really usable in terms of doing a mass deployment to say 500 users in an organisation. So what we've done with 14 is teamed up with Astra and Polycom initially to bring out this range of different IP phones, and I've fundamentally got the three types in terms of where the price points actually sit. Polycom CX500, first off, this is one I actually got here, or its equivalent, the Astra 6721. So this is the lovely sort of phone. It's got a single Ethernet port on the back, okay, as it goes on there. So it's essentially designed for those high volume areas, perhaps in the reception area where you want visitors to be able to have access to a type of device. That's where that goes. All right? I think MSRP is $199 retail from Polycom for that device. That's not street price, that's buying one volume, and that's what it'll cost you. The next one as it steps up here is really what we call the information worker or knowledge worker phones. Okay, so this is the CX600 or its equivalent, the 6725. So this is this phone here, and I'm going to set all these up on one of the stands in the marketplace in the next day or so you can actually come and see what they actually look like powered up in terms of the screen and everything else. So this has gigabit Ethernet switch, as I mentioned previously, across the back there. We have this USB connectivity, so I can actually tether it from what we call a better together experience in terms of a mobile device. HD audio quality in terms of handset, wideband audio codec, we deliver straight from the device as it goes through. Then for the conference phone rooms, if you don't have a round table in there delivering you that video experience and you want the audio experience, then we have this, which is the CX3000 now from Polycom. Okay, again, it looks similar to a lot of where we've evolved over analog and digital and those sorts of devices, but this runs the same client experience within the display on there. So I see the contacts, I see expose the pictures and all that type of capability as it goes in there. And we have extending mics that will connect in there and those sorts of things as well. This range of devices will grow and grow as we move forward, okay? So it's not something that's just static and this is it. As we move forward, you'll see other vendors coming into the mix, bringing not only audio type devices, but also think beyond that in terms of video, by moving to more personal video beyond the desktop, into room-based video, and a lot of those compliant solutions, okay? So all of those, anything that has this little tag on there, this optimized for Microsoft Office Communicator, we've certified, all right? So there are a lot of devices. I mean, you can go and buy a $10 headset from Dick Smith's, okay, and plug it in there, an audio headset, and that'll work, okay? No problem at all. What you're not going to get is the full fidelity in terms of that audio quality and that HD audio that we do with our wideband codecs delivered through there. That's why we say anything with a little sticker on that says optimized for, or tagged up on a partner's website that says optimized for, we've tested it as Microsoft and we've certified that device as it goes out. So we'll step through the information worker desk phone. So screenshot of what the screen actually looks like with the home screen. It's quite dark on here, but we've got to scroll up here where I've got a calendar. Okay, I've got voicemails, I've got a phone icon, and I can just scroll up and down around there and actually step through. My contacts, as it looks by default, so I have the same presence view that I have on my communicator client. So when I sign into a phone, it takes my same contacts that I have on my desktop, PC client, and exposes those clients into here. Because I can sign onto one of these phones anywhere, right? Great if you've got a hot desking environment. You rack up to the office, you find an empty desk, there's one of these phones on there, you sign on with your PIN number, bang, all my calls now come to this device. I make all my calls with my number, and all of my contacts and everything else are exposed as if I were in my home office as well. Okay. I can do a search on there using the numeric keypad, okay? As I search through each number, that'll push through, all right? It's active, so it will tailor down and actually do a real search, an active search around finding names. I click on and expose the contact card of the user once I've actually found them, all right? Again, it's the same look, it's the same feel as the desktop. Okay, I can see what the phone numbers are actually advertised. I can see availability and presence, as well as the photo that we're putting down either through SharePoint or through some other web service. Incoming calls, exactly the same experience. The toast up to the PC is replicated through onto these devices as well. Okay? So I know who an incoming call is, and I have options. Obviously, I can pick up the phone, pick up the handset, or if I don't really want to take that call, so I know who it's coming from now, I can send that straight to voicemail. Right? Interesting when you do that because the user knows you've done that. The reason they know you've done that is because your presence was available, right? And you still sent them to voicemail. So just want to be aware of, right, in terms of managing presence. In a call, again, real time, presence changes. Active call, you see the presence state moves from green, moves to red, it shows I'm in a call. When I'm in a call, I can bring up the menu and say, okay, what can I do with that call, right? I could conference, I could just drag somebody in, I could transfer it to the parking lot, just blind transfer it to somebody. I could do what we call a consultative transfer, where I announce that I'm passing over a call to Andrew before I actually put it through to him, sort of courtesy transfer as it goes through. Or, you know, I'm stuck there, I'm talking, it's getting near 5 o'clock and I want to go home. I can flip that off to my mobile phone in real time, right? So I can hand off between my call that I'm having on the phone there, transfer it to my mobile in real time and just continue the conversation as I walk away from the phone. So endpoint transfer as it pops through. The meeting reminder is a great one. So it says on there, next meeting at 12 o'clock. Probably just a bit dark in terms of the blue on the screen. Okay. When I actually drill through into the calendar details, you'll see it replicates what I have in my Outlook calendar, and that's pushed all the way through instead of today's calendar. Okay. I can scroll down there. The one on the right-hand side, the last meeting that's scheduled on there is a conference call. Okay, call with Asian subsidiary. The one difference you'll see between here is I don't have to open up using the details button, actually expose and open up that conference in order to get the dial-in details. I have one click join, and that will take me straight through and authenticate me into that conference as well. When I'm in a conference call, I get an attendee roster. Right, it's displayed to my phone. I can see there's 3 participants, including myself, actually on that call. And if I really want to, because I don't like someone or whatever they're saying, I can remove them from that conference. Right? So I've got great controls that I take around to the device, however I wish to do that. Call forwarding, exactly the same as the client. So I don't need to be on my PC now. If I want to go and set my call forward options, I can do that straight from the client. Whether it's sending my call to voicemail, to somebody else, a contact, or set up SIM ring because I want all my incoming calls to ring, perhaps on my mobile and somebody else's phone as well. All of those things you can do, just as you can do from the rich client, you can do from the IP phone standalone device. So that's a bit about voice, and I'm going to talk a little bit about video and conferencing and collaboration, and then do some demonstration of this, because this is best demoed in terms of to get that understanding around here. Right? We no longer have a separate live meeting client for communication server. So when you want to have a multi-party communication session, okay, we just use the native communicator client. We still expose video into what we call active speaker mode. All right. So whoever's in a meeting and whoever's talking in a meeting, if you've got say 10 people or 20 people in there, their video will be displayed to everybody else whilst they're talking. Okay, to go through. The roundtable panorama, that if you've seen that before inside a live meeting, that's like the film strip of a room, this 360-degree camera that's exposed. That is exposed in the communicator client as well. Right? Again, we don't need a separate client to do this. So fundamentally, the experience for a user, whether I'm doing a 2-person call or whether I'm doing a 200-person call, it doesn't make any difference. The scale in terms of how we've tested this thing is up to 250 concurrent users in a call, okay, audio, video, and the like. That's the tested number. Depending on your server specs, you could probably scale way, way beyond that, but that's what in terms of what we'll support in terms of recommendation. Scheduling is simplified. When I do a meeting now, I go into my calendar, I have a new online meeting, I have a single click button, and I'll step through and show how we actually schedule a meeting and how we actually join a meeting. Really great feature like this one, the meeting lobby. When you're preparing an online meeting, you might be uploading some content, you might be getting ready for it, you're running a couple of minutes late. A great thing was, or even if you don't want to join your meeting yet because you're not sure if anyone's joined, right? So I'm sat there doing my email, okay? What people who dial into my conference that I've organised, say 12 o'clock, they'll get held in this meeting lobby, all right? So rather than going straight into the meeting, they get this little notification saying they'll let the meeting organiser know you're there and you're waiting. Then as an organiser, I get a notification sent to me that's saying, hey, Andrew's waiting to join the lobby, Paul's waiting to join the lobby, whoever it happens to be, actually there. Okay, I can then get in and join the conference at that stage, and I can either admit or not admit, if I so wish, people individually, or admit everybody at once, okay, as it comes in. It allows you, when you're doing big broadcast conferences, now if somebody's sent on if you didn't invite protected mail, and somebody's sent on the full invites, you may not want those particular people in that meeting, right? So you can actually be selective in how you actually handle around on there. Another great feature that we've introduced and is what we call content preview. Anybody that is a presenter in the conference. So if we do an online meeting and there's, say, 3 or 4 of us presenting. Okay, so I might do my deck, then Andrew's teeing up and he wants to do his deck next. With live meeting, where we're previously with our Office Communication Server, he would have to wait till I'm finished, then he'd take over control, then he'd present his deck. Now, he can actually review his own content in private, even though he's part of the meeting experience, whilst I'm still presenting online. Another great feature, or not so great feature, depends on your mindset around this, and how you actually had it in your organisation, is when I'm presenting and I'm going through my charts, and anybody that's a presenter in there thinks, oh, geez, I've heard Paul say this a million times, right, these 10 charts. They can actually go ahead and skip through your charts in advance of what I'm actually presenting at that time. Okay, so they can view the same content in private and actually skip through the salient. So they don't need to wait for all what I'm talking about. Okay, yep, I understand that. I want to move on because I need to get somewhere else. So content preview and the ability to scan through that stuff is a neat little feature in there. So with that, I'm actually going to step out and go and show that in demonstration. So for those that weren't at the session this morning, this is my communicator client as it goes on there. I won't talk through the details of that because we've done it earlier on, and the sessions are available by replay. If you want to go in and see what we talked about, the communicator client and presence, etc., that's there. So I already want to just show and talk about video and around the meeting experience. So I haven't actually got any devices plugged in except one of these little life cams that we're giving away 3 of at the end. Okay, in terms of my video device, so I'll do the audio on the PC. So when I expose and go into my calendar now, you'll see that I have this new online meeting button that's pushed up around there. Okay, I want to schedule a meeting. I could do an appointment, I could do a meeting, or I could do an online meeting. Okay, single click, that'll go away. That will append and pre-populate all the information onto that invite. Okay, so I can just invite people as I wish. So I'll invite Paul alongside me here. I'll also invite Andrew, who's sat down in the audience in there. And we'll invite Lowe as well. Okay, you'll see instantaneously we're getting real-time presence extended from these users before I've even sent out the meeting request. If you've seen the previous versions of Communication Server and the live meeting invite, things you'll notice is it's simplified. There's a single URI there in terms of a single join online meeting, in terms of a link where I can go in and join a meeting. Whether I'm an internal user to the organisation, whether I'm an external user that doesn't even have anything deployed, right? I can invite people into this meeting, external to me. They can be pushed out an attendee client, which is a cut-down version of the client, have that same meeting experience in terms of how I actually go in and actually join through there. All right, so I'm making an online meeting, and I'll pull that forward now to just after the 2:30. It goes in. All right, meeting options, another nice little feature. I'll just bring this on there. So I can go in and I can customize access to who becomes a presenter. So I can choose individual people for that invite. I can say everybody in my own organisation, which tends to be the default policy that's pushed out around there. External people wouldn't be a presenter, they'd just be an attendee, but everyone else would have presenter rights. Okay, so we do a lot of things and a lot of customizations. The other thing is around access. So I can actually say, who gets access to the meeting without accessing the lobby. Well, I'm going to say no one, right? I'm going to lock it. So only I get access, everyone else gets hold in the meeting lobby. Okay. I can also do things like changing the dial-in phone number. So if people were joining via a phone, they can just dial in using the local phone number. You can append that with any other number you would happen to have in your other sites as well, so they can connect in. Okay. So let me go away and send out that invite. Push that through. Because I said it for now, I've already got the reminder. What you will see on the meeting reminder is, I was talking about earlier, join online. Okay. I don't need to go and open up that demo invite to click on that link even there. I can just do a one-click join directly from that meeting reminder. Okay, that's going to push up and take me into the conference experience. Just drop that away so you can just see my client. Okay, if you saw the client, you see currently one participant, right? That's myself in the meeting as it goes through on there. Well, I've got my status set to manually do not disturb to stop dust coming through. Otherwise, if I reset that, it will come in as in a conference call. Okay, so that's actually put in. We'll see as the other users start to come in there. So I've already enabled, I can show or not show the instant message area, the participant list as it comes through. The users will be held in the lobby and I'll get a notification that pushes up as they join through. So I should actually send that out there. You can see I've got this meeting is locked as it actually comes through. When we see the users pop in, they'll drop in. I can also go in and then think, okay, yeah, I'm going to add video in here. Start sharing my video, so I'm going to start my webcam up as it goes in. Okay, so it's just a webcam on my PC. If I really want to, I can detach that. I can go full screen. and actually bring it out. Depending on your network quality, we can now do video in meetings in VGA, okay, in terms of multi-party collaboration around it. Whereas we were doing sort of 720 down at peer-to-peer, we can now do that here, including up to VGA quality, which has changed from where we went to with Release 2. Let's see if any of the guys have get my meeting invite come through, or did I not send it? So it's just me and my meeting, right? So I'm pretty lonely right now, so, to show the experience. Other stuff I can actually do when I go in there, right? So I want to have this meeting, and I want to share the experience. So I have options in terms of what I actually share now. I can share my whole desktop. I can share an individual open program. I can pre-upload a PowerPoint. So this is what allows me, by uploading it to the server, allows other users, other presenters to actually access that content in private and scroll through in terms of the presentation preview and how it actually goes. We can do whiteboards, we can do polls, and all that stuff as it comes in. If I go in and choose an individual program, you'll see any open program I have on my PC is what is available and what I can actually share as it goes in there, right? So I have a Word document on there, I'll click on that, I'll click on share, okay. I'm sharing by myself because no one's actually joined my conferences yet as it goes on there, but you get the feel. So that view in terms of what I'm actually sharing and what I'm actually pushing out on there at that time. Okay, so somebody's waiting for the lobby. See the pop-up I've got there, okay? So it says I'm now sharing my screen, and I can look at a preview of what people are seeing. And who's waiting in the lobby? I can see Andrew's waiting in the lobby there, so I can admit or not admit, as I choose, into the conference, okay? So we'll admit Andrew in. Hey, you can see on there in terms of how it's brought it through. We've now got a second person joining through into the conference. As it pops through, Andrew's just sitting down in front on there. Hey, and now Paul's just joined in as well, so my meeting invite took a bit of time to get it through. So that's admit Paul, bring him in, bang. You see now we've now got 3 people in terms of the conference as it pushes through in there in terms of I scroll through my attendee roster. Great thing as well is, you know, I can right-click and I can demote somebody from being a presenter. You know, you can change people around on how they actually look on it. Real useful features. I can also, another great one, unmute. If you ask someone a question and they're just totally ignoring you because they're falling asleep, you can unmute them remotely, get them to start talking. Or more importantly, when you get 50 people on a conference call, someone has got a dog somewhere, right? It's just the way it is. Okay, so you can go in and you can mute the people around there. You can see who's speaking at the time in terms of come up on the display. It's like a gold colour in terms of the handset, which is the active speaker around there. So you tend to know who's the person working from home with a noisy dog or the noisy cat, and you actually go in there and actually do some stuff around on there. Okay, so the other stuff I can do, I can hand over control, all right? So I can automatically accept control requests to hand over content and access to my Word document I'm sharing, or I could share it over to a presenter and actually push that through as well. Just drop that out. The other thing I have, if I right-click and show, and we can do this with peer-to-peer as well, is we have this start recording option, okay? So I can actually now record this meeting, however many people are in here. That's going to capture the audio, it's allowed by policy, it's going to capture the video, allowed by policy, and the content. If we go in, and even on a PowerPoint, if we start using the annotating tools as we go through and showing that in, and drawing on stuff in the document, what we've done, all of that stuff is captured in the recording manager, okay, as it comes out. So after I've actually start recording around here, that'll record it all through. When I finish the conference, I'll get a little pop-up to say this is in the recording manager session, and then I can actually go in and publish that as a WMV file and send it out to everybody, or stick it up on a SharePoint, the way I happen to be around it. Okay, so it's a great conference experience. Cameras are going to focus around there. Okay, so that's the you know, the meeting experience as it goes through. The idea being is it's simple. Okay, you know, I can see video, I can pop out the video, I can put it on a little screen, I can take it out and I can dock it elsewhere, you know, as it goes around there. However I wish to handle that, I can actually change that around in real time. I can go full screen. Nobody else has got their camera started up on here, so you're just seeing my own video around. But you know, as we get people to switch, it will show the other person as it pops through. So very, very easy to use, intuitive meeting experience that we have on Communications Server 14. I'll say the lobby one is a nice little feature to have, and the controls as a user. It's not now thinking I need to learn a separate set of tools in terms of where I was before, in terms of being able to handle this. Okay, so we're also getting IM popping in there. My wireless connection will take a time down. It's funny, that never happens to me on the wireless, not a tech end, as we go through that. Okay, that's fine, so I'm just going to drop out of that session. Okay, so in terms of the time, we're coming down to the end now. So just wanted to flag up in terms of related sessions that we've got. So we've skipped through at a high level. We haven't really touched on setup. We haven't really touched around on deployment in terms of how that plays. So Andrew has a session tomorrow morning where he's going to walk through a show how we set up Communication Server 14. So if you've deployed OCSR2, strongly recommend you actually come across and actually see that. We'll also be looking at voice integration and migration. So where we touched on how about PBXs, how you integrate, what are the options to integrate, what's the best migration strategy for your organization, those will be covered off. And finally, just a real big one around availability, around DR, around architecture, how that all plays together. That's the last of the CS14 sessions. I've not tied up on the Exchange Server 2010 sessions, so there's about 4 or 5 of those that are also happening as well. So obviously very tightly linked when we look at a messaging point of view and how we sort of fully integrate in terms of the comms infrastructure around with Exchange as well. So I strongly recommend that if you're interested in the UC track, definitely those 3 sessions we have there, and also tie in and do the Exchange sessions. So as we move on to Q&A, one thing I'll ask before you go, we get into Q&A, is if you will please fill out the evals so you get online when you get some chance. So it's just great to get that feedback. That's what we got. And no, can I have an Xbox instead of a webcam sort of eval? That doesn't cut it around there. But what we do have is for Q&A now, I've got 3 of these HD life cams. So they're a nice little device actually. I travel with these all the time. Got 3 of those to give away, and a couple of T-shirts. The T-shirts have a code on the front. Something to do with virtualization, but you need to go and work out what the code says. Make sure you're wearing that at the Microsoft stand at I think it's 1:15, maybe 1:30 tomorrow or each day this week at TechEd. Okay. If you get selected there and you answer what's written on the shirt and you've done the conversion, you get it to win an Xbox 360. Okay, that's what you want to say. Whilst it's a T-shirt, it's got some value at the back end. That's what I'm selling it to you now, right? More than a T-shirt. So with that, I'm happy to open up for any questions. Go away. White T-shirt. Yeah, so the question is, are the phones power over Ethernet? Yes, they are. So you can either, they come with, I'm sorry, it's an optional, but they come with a local power brick, or you can do PoE as well, as it goes through there. Class is, class 2, it's not the high one in terms of the actual the power draw around there. I think it's worthy of a T-shirt. Not quite a webcam, but a T-shirt. Smallest deployment. Okay. So the question was around, obviously in New Zealand, a lot of our organisations are fairly small, in terms of that. When we look at, if we compare it with the US market as an example, so how does this really scale down and meet those needs? So we didn't touch on this session, but we did in this morning with CS14. We support virtualization. All right. Across Hyper-V, we tested it on Hyper-V. We've also tested it on VMware. Okay. Those are the 2 hypervisors we tested on. So you can actually drop all of these server roles if you wanted to onto a single box. Okay, including voice, including VNR. We can actually drop this down and we can support full virtualization. So that allows it to scale down far further than it did do with R2, as well as do things like the mediation server and those sorts of things that are now co-located. Virtualization brings it down. There is a prereq, and obviously you need to have an AD infrastructure in place. So that sort of takes out, certain low-level organizations or low user counts around there. And obviously to deliver that full unified messaging experience, we recommend you have Exchange Server 2010 deployed as well. So that's really it's not really how big is the organization and where does it fit. It's, are you running, do you have AD? Do you run or will you run Exchange? If the answer is yes, then this is a very cost-effective solution. Especially when you look at a TCO in terms of what it costs per user, when you add up the device, the back-end hardware, and all the necessary stuff you need for traditional PBX against Communication Server, you'll be very, very pleasantly surprised how that stacks up. So it can scale down. It's just how far is really dictated by that back-end requirement. So we actually put Edge out in the DMZ, right? So we recommend in terms of how you actually partition your external traffic going through there, in terms of your federation, remote users, that actually sits in the DMZ, all right? So you could sandwich that if you like with firewalls, either side. So it's not with there. So you'd actually separate that from the rest of the infrastructure to support that out there. Is the simple answer. Grab you another T-shirt. Got time for a couple more questions. A couple more questions, and then happy to stay along afterwards, and then we can answer some more as we go through. So as the next class gets set up. Yep. No. So we don't only. So the question was around codecs and termination, how we do things like media bypass with G711, ALAW, or MULAW, or whatever it happens to be, right? We support more than RTA and RTV in our client stack, okay? We support a number of GDOC codecs, G711 being one of those as well, natively from the communicator client as it goes out there, all right? So we can negotiate, I love call that G711 in terms of then to do that media bypass, not an RTA to that other device. Good question, so. Okay, one more question. We go right at the top of the white shirt. That's right. That wasn't a stage question, but the question is, do you have any white papers around the cost of deploying this solution compared to a traditional PBX? Funnily enough, we do. Actually, I'll tell you one of the best things. There's a conference that happens twice a year in the States called VoiceCon. It's just being rebranded right now. All right? And every year at VoiceCon, they put out an RFP for a voice platform or a UC platform. Okay? We actually responded to the last one, which was in March, with a communication server bid. So all the vendors bid. You have to put in full street pricing, includes devices, it includes hardware, gateways, and all the like. I would strongly recommend anybody goes on and downloads. It's available from the Microsoft public site in terms of our entire response around how we meet the requirements from a features capability point of view. There is also a chart that was done there by the VoiceCon analyst team at the end when they reviewed all the responses, and it shows price points for every single vendor, you name it, from the traditional guide, all the names you would expect would be there. And there's an open source one in the middle, okay? And we're actually cheaper than open source. So that's fine. That's the claim. By the time you factor in the cost to deliver devices through there, support, hardware, gateways, and all those devices, on a per-user TCO model, it comes in there. So yes, we have that from our public site, as well as some real white papers around where the actual cost savings are on there as well. So, great question. Come down at the end and grab your webcam. So thanks everyone for your time, but we'll be around for a little bit afterwards. So any questions, please come up and ask. Thank you.